Everybody loves steak, right? You got ribeye, you got filet. Some people do the steak sliders. I'm all for that. But when it comes to college football in the 2024 season, what's at stake this year? We'll talk about that here in just a matter of moments. Welcome into the Hard Count, the People's College Football Show, baby, and we talk ball all year round. We have a ton to get after today. What's going on with USC? I mean, gosh dang, Lincoln Riley and company, they were on fire not but like 20 minutes ago. And then over the course of the last 24 to 48 hours, lost not 5, but 10 stars in the recruiting trail. Both Justice Terry and Isaiah Gibson have decommitted. So we checked in with our friends over at We Are SC, USC's On 3 site to kind of check the vibe of things. We also chop it up with Josh Newberg, national recruiting analyst for us here at On 3 and host of the Inside Scoop, to just get a gauge for, one, okay, how do you feel if you're a USC fan? And the more important question is, what's next? Because like Sylvester Stallone will tell you, man, it's not about getting hit. It's about how hard you can get hit. Or not. It's not about hitting someone else. Can you keep moving forward is the question here for USC. We'll talk about that in a matter of moments as well. Also, a couple of new teams now joining conferences, and more than a couple, but some of the more fascinating ones. You got USC, Oregon, Texas, Oklahoma, Utah. What's going to be the key to success for those new programs in their new homes? We'll talk about that. If you're a Georgia fan, what's a win total you're happy with? It's kind of a trick question, I suppose. Vegas has you right around 10.5 wins. Is that good enough if you hit the over? I think there's maybe more to that conversation than just what's the win total you're happy with, but nonetheless, we'll discuss it. And then we'll keep it rolling with college football 25 talk. Y'all, we're less than a month away. I said it yesterday. If you are in Dallas and you have a console, let me know, because when the game drops, we'll be there for media days, so we're kind of between a rock and a hard place there in terms of being in a place that we are at home at, having a console. So we'll have to cross that bridge when it gets here. But who are going to be the top defensive players in the game? We gave you our top-rated offensive players yesterday. Today is top defensive players. We got a lot to jump into, man. It is a beautiful thing that we're sitting here in the month of June and talking college football and only college football, so we're glad to have you a part of this. 2 quick things to do before we get rolling here. 1, make sure you are subscribed to this channel. We're reaching that point now where we got to have everybody. We can't have anybody falling behind, because we're about to hit media days, and before you know it, it's fall camp, then it's the season. We can't have anybody losing their place in this pack, all right? So make sure you're dialed in. Little subscribe button on the channel. Hit that for us. If you are listening on podcast, please subscribe there as well. Second thing, just like the video. It boosts us. It boosts y'all. High tide raises all boats, and away we go. All right, let's get right to this, man. What's at stake in 2024? And what I mean by that is, what is, it's pretty self-explanatory what's at stake in 2024. What hangs in the balance for a couple of these teams across the college football landscape? I think Alabama is one of the most fascinating instances when it comes to what could be at stake. Because think about what we've known about Alabama for the better part of the last 17 years. Consistent, steady, high floor. Well, now for the first time, we're asking, what's Alabama going to be under a new head coach? Everybody's wondering, what is Kalen DeBoer's Alabama going to be like? And when I say everybody, more specifically, high-profile recruits that win you football games, they're wondering that. I think the bigger question they're asking, not just what are they going to be, what can I do if I go to Alabama? What am I getting myself into if I commit to go play football in Tuscaloosa? Am I still able to win national championships? Are they still going to produce draft picks? I know Kalen DeBoer did good things at Washington, but this is the SEC now, all right? This is a different beast. Is Alabama still the Alabama they have been over the course of the last 15-plus years? If the answer is yes, then you're going to see recruiting just take off. Pour rocket fuel on that thing, and they're going to be in good shape. What that would look like to me to stabilize optics or maybe reaffirm optics in Tuscaloosa and Kalen DeBoer, right around 10-plus wins. I think that would be good enough to, one, get you in the college football playoff. If you're winning more than 10 games, you're probably playing for the SEC championship. And then if you're winning that many games, I feel pretty good about your chances when you get to the college football playoff itself to make a nice little run. So stabilizing optics, that's what's at stake at Alabama. Something else at stake is the narrative around the state of Florida. Because look at it this way. If you're Florida State, if you win the state for the 3rd year in a row, and the way you would do that with a brand new roster, bringing back pretty much nobody from last year's squad, 83rd returning production are the Noles. Think about think about the way that would look to recruits in the state of Florida. It's more of a conversation around Mike Norvell, I think. You're saying, okay, Mike Norvell, he had success the last 2 years, but he has success with a new quarterback, new skill players, bunch of new pieces on the defensive line. If he has success with a new roster, he is the common denominator. And if he goes out and beats Miami and beats Florida for the third year in a row and goes 6-0 in the state in the last 3 years, Florida State's that big dog. And if you're the big dog in the state of Florida and you are the school of choice for top recruits in the state of Florida, tell you what, you're going to hoist some hardware. Pretty safe bet there, if you ask me. But if you look at the other schools in the state, we'll talk about the big three more specifically. Florida, it very much so feels like a show-me year because you got there for Billy Napier, and we've said this many times. I think what they inherited had some holes in it, both culturally and from a roster standpoint. Year 3, it is now your show. Okay, like you can talk about how you have ground to make up your first year. You can talk about ground to make up your second year. By year 3, it's like, hey, the business has to start making money. We have to get ourselves into the black here. No more being in the neutral. We gotta start producing some good things. And the schedule is ridiculous, but I think in some ways that could be Billy Napier's greatest asset. Because if they go out and shock some folks in November like I think they're going to me, that is billboard moments. Even if they don't go win the SEC, that could be a billboard moment for a school like Florida to say, hey, we're showing you something. You asked us to show you something. We had progress. And if they're able to have success specifically week 1 and then that last game of the season, if you catch my drift here against Miami and Florida State, that's all. Those are the only pitches you need to make if you're Florida. Keep talent in the Sunshine State. Going to the school in the SEC. You're in good shape. Miami, if you're Miami, if you're a Miami fan, you feel like this is supposed to be your year. Because what I just said about Florida State, not a lot of returning production. Florida, everybody's making them a joke right now. Do so at your own risk. But Miami is the school that I think most individuals in the college football public are buying stock in. Yes, because of Cam Ward. Yes, because of the other pieces they got through the portal and Damian Martinez and Sam Brown. But like Mario Cristobal's sitting there in year 3 and doing what Mario Cristobal does, he's got a stacked roster. Like they have dudes on the line of scrimmage that are able to eat your lunch and do it with a smile on their face. And they're young bucks. Ruben Bain on the defensive side. Francis Mawanoa. He is a highlight play waiting to happen as an offensive lineman. I mean, he put a dude 3 feet deep into the turf in that game against Louisville. Like, they got some dudes now that can legitimately move the line of scrimmage. And so the reason why I give all that context around Miami, in year 3 now, it should be the point where the power swings back towards the Canes. And they're able to make some statements within that state. So the narrative around the state of Florida, I think, is very fluid right now. But if Florida State is able to be the big dog, solidify themselves, that's going to set the trajectory, I believe, for the next few years within that state. Not saying Florida State just dominates the state for the next few years, but I do think acquiring top talent in that state, as we've mentioned many times, that's the key to not just winning your conference, but winning like national championships. So take of that as you will. You know what else we got going here? We're going to talk about this more later in the show. We got a bunch of newbies. And when I say newbies, I mean new schools, or not new schools, schools in new conferences is a better way to say that. I'll say this too. We said this a few times about these schools. Whenever you meet your girlfriend's dad for the first time, you get one chance in that handshake. You better go in, wide grip, firm grip. You don't break off. You keep good eye contact. You get one chance to do that. That is essentially the same thing for a lot of these schools in their new conference. Like for Texas and the SEC, we are going to set the narrative for them over the course of the next couple of seasons based on what they do this first year. Heck, we're going to probably unpack last year's narrative around Texas based on what they do this first year in the SEC. Because if they go into the SEC, and let's just say it's kind of a rocky start, you lose some close games, Texas looks good, but they lose some close games, people are going to be very quick to disregard what happened on the field, look at the record, say, oh, Texas, they went 8-4? Told you they were only a one-year wonder. Told you it was a schedule that just lined up perfectly for Texas and the defense played well. Like, there's going to be a lot of excuses built in as to why Texas had success last year and what they're not going to do in the future. So this is a year where they can, I've said this many times, validate what they did previously. For Oklahoma, kind of the same thing. They went 6-7 their first year under Brent Venables, won 10 games the next year. This year is kind of the, okay, are we keeping that trend upward? What are you in the SEC? And the same thing is true about Oklahoma as it is Texas. This is massive for recruiting. Recruits are trying to get a good gauge for what those schools are going to be now in their new conference. How do they stack up? Where do they slide in the pecking order against the Tennessees, the LSUs, the Alabamas? All those schools are going to be compared to Texas and Oklahoma now when it comes time to recruit. For Oregon, I think you're asking, are they really a top-tier team? Because the Pac-12 was great last year. Bo Nix is awesome, had 60-plus starts or whatever it was, like most experienced quarterback in college football. That's awesome. He's gone now, though. Can you win with some new individuals on that team? Most notably Dylan Gabriel playing quarterback for you. And in a new conference where, I mean, God bless the Pac-12. It was phenomenal last year. But the Big Ten on the line of scrimmage is just a different beast. We all understand that. How does that translate? Now, I think full transparency is going to translate seamlessly. But can you, it's one thing to say it here in June. Can you do it when it comes time to play games in the fall? I'm looking forward to watching that. And for USC, can you hang? Can you hang in the Big Ten? Because I just said I just questioned Oregon and if they're going to be able to translate to the Big Ten Conference. Now, I have a ton of confidence they will translate, but around USC, there's not a lot of confidence, just quite frankly. Right now, there's a lot of questions around how good they're going to be in that conference, most notably because of those big human beings. Now, I have more questions about USC and where they're going to be long-term, but you cannot allow 4.8 yards a carry and win in the Big Ten. Can't do it. Can't do it. Now, again, I think there's more to that discussion around them having success in the Big Ten than just the line of scrimmage play, but that's the big thing everyone's asking. Now, staying in the Big Ten, you know what else is at stake this year is the belief factor around Ohio State. Notice what I did not say there. I did not say Ryan Day's job is at stake. I did not say the future of Ohio State football is at stake, but the belief factor, I think, is at stake around the Buckeyes this year. For the reason being, if it's not this year that you win the Big Ten, that you beat Michigan, I think the expectation is in Columbus that you win a national championship. When's it going to be? When's it going to be? Because on paper, we just did a segment on it yesterday. Urban Meyer's sitting here telling you this is the most talented roster I think they've had at Ohio State ever. Ever. That's a big word now. And the roster, when you look at it, I mean, it's hard to disagree with Urban Meyer. The defense has got not just returning production, but a ton of talent as well to go with it. It's not like you just brought back dudes for the sake of bringing back dudes because they weren't going to get drafted. They had a lot of NFL players that I believe would have found themselves on a roster right now. They wanted to come back. I'm not telling you NIL wasn't a part of that. I'm not telling you they didn't want to improve their draft grade, but they have dudes that will play on Sundays back on that defense. A lot of them. Quinshawn Judkins. You've heard me say this many times. Quinshawn Judkins, Travion Henderson. I think that's the best backfield in America. Will Howard, he's an upgrade, I'm telling you. If it doesn't happen this year, when's it going to happen? And more importantly, if I'm an Ohio State fan, why do I have better reason to believe it's going to happen in the future? So I'm not telling you that it's going to determine success or not having success in the future for Ohio State based on this year, but the belief factor, I think you would be probably a little bit more hesitant to buy in the future if there's not success this year, like you expect there to be success this year if you're Ohio State. Last one to talk about here, we mentioned the conference realignment within the Big Ten and within the SEC. The Big 12's got a lot of new pieces. And I think maybe more importantly, they lose Texas and OU, which, just to call a spade here, those have been consistently the most talented rosters in that conference. They're gone now. So what that means is the talent level in terms of caliber of player across the board is a lot more similar across the entire conference. So my question here is what's at stake is who's going to be the new big dog in the conference? I don't think it's unreasonable to say over the course of the last however many years, Oklahoma kind of was that big dog. Texas won the conference on their way out. But if you're able to win the conference the first year of the new Big 12, and we're probably going to call it the new Big 12 here for, as long as it's still a conference. I'm not calling it the All-State 12, just so we're all on the same page there. If you're able to win the conference, how it stands right now, you're able to maybe have that leverage to recruit a higher caliber of player. Like you're able to walk into those high schools if you're Utah and say, hey, listen, we're going to run this conference for a while now. We just won it last year. Come play for us. And maybe you grab a couple more 4 stars, that 5-star that maybe you weren't going to get if you didn't have that proof of concept. I think it's important, going back to first impressions, this is our first impression from the outside looking in if we're a recruit at what the Big 12 is going to be. So starting fast matters. A lot of things at stake in 2024, but the beautiful part about it, the truth serum that is the football field is going to give us our answers here in the not too distant future, and I can't wait for it. It's crazy. We are so close to having college football games being played. It's a beautiful thing. It snuck up, man. It feels like we were just in Houston. It feels like we were just sitting down in that media room off of 3 hours of sleep, doing our live show, doing our recap, and having a smile on our face doing it and being like, wow, that was incredible. And now we're about to have week 0 in a matter of, it feels like 20 minutes. So if you're tuned in live, we appreciate y'all, man. We got a great show lined up. We got a lot more to jump into. We also have a segment that I didn't mention at the top of this show, head coaches you would hire if you were starting your program today. The caveat, they cannot have had more than 5 years of coaching experience. Head coaching experience. That's an important qualifier there. Before we get to that, though, 1, caffeine. Awesome. That just tastes like culture is what it tastes like to me. Tastes like good culture at the On3 headquarters. That's first. Second, random college football player of the day. One of you replied to one of my Instagram posts. I forget if it was a reel or it was a story. One of you replied, and it jogged my memory with this player. Tank Carter. Not Tank Carter with a T, Tank Carter with a D. He was about that life. TCU linebacker, Rose Bowl champion, multiple-time Mountain West Defensive Player of the Year. JD, wait, Big 12. No. TCU was in the Mountain West when he was playing linebacker back there. When I think about Tank Carter, I think about the cowboy collar. I think about the eye black, the nasal strip. Like, he just looked like a linebacker from the state of Texas. That's exactly what he was. 2011 Rose Bowl defensive MVP against Wisconsin when Andy Dalton and company walked in there into Pasadena in a poetic scene that is the Rose Bowl whenever the sun sets over those San Gabriel Mountains, knocked down a 2-point conversion that would have tied the game for Wisconsin. One of the legends at TCU without question, and is one of the early, in my mind at least, like G5 players that really was deserving of national attention for sure. So Tank Carter, for us here, random college football player of the day. A great way to keep up with that, too, is on my social channels, at JD Pickell, Instagram, and on Twitter. We post on there as well to honor our random college football player of the day. Also, get at me on those platforms and let me know who your random college football player of the day is. As you can tell, by nature of us just talking about Tank Carter, we listen to y'all because y'all run this whole show. So thank you for that. Speaking of running the show, man, who would you hire to run your show if you were starting a program tomorrow? They hand you the keys. They say, hey, hire whoever you want. One qualifier, though. Whatever head coach you hire, they have had to have less than 5 years of head coaching experience in college football. So that very obviously eliminates Kirby Smart, eliminates Dabo Swinney, eliminates Ryan Day. It also just barely now, because I'm counting Sioux Falls as well, eliminates Kalen DeBoer. So you can't hire him. So who are you hiring? Can't hire Steve Sarkisian also. Who's your guy? I'm going to go actually in order here. Typically when we do exercises like this, we go in no particular order. I'm going to go in order here in terms of my list with who I'm hiring. And the first guy I'm calling, and I mean, I'm calling, I'm FaceTiming, I'm texting, I'm DMing. I'm doing anything in my power to make this man my head coach. It's going to be a tall task because he's said no to other jobs, it sounds like, at least over the course of the last few high-profile jobs that have become available. I see it in the chat. Dan Lanning, layup of all layups here, man. Layup of all layups. 22-5 in 2 years in Eugene. We mentioned him yesterday being one of the individuals who I believe has the most potential in all of college football. Oregon has landed 2 top 10 classes since he's been there, working on his 3rd right now. So what does that tell us? He recruits. He's Jimmy's and Joe's oriented. He understands what wins football games. And teams take on the persona of their leadership. And if I hire Dan Lanning to be my football coach, I know that my team is going to have a lot of heart, all right? Going to care about each other, going to have a great culture, going to have a ridiculous competitive streak. Like, you watch Dan Lanning, if you've ever seen any of his post-game press conferences or pre-game speeches, the way that he communicates, that dude is all business. Like, whenever we got to interview him on this show, it's a little bit tricky to tell how he's receiving the questions because he doesn't smile much. And if he does, he's talking about football. So Dan Lanning, ball guy through and through. There's no way around it. I love the way he's also built his rosters at Oregon. I'm not going to tell you he hasn't inherited some really good players because he has. But what his teams have had since he's been there are two things. One, great line of scrimmage play, defensive and offensive. He told us when we had him on the first time on this show 2 years ago, he's like, it's no secret. The game's won up front, so we're going to have big boys. They've had those at Oregon. Also, great quarterback play. Bo Nix was a tremendous get for them via the portal. So what does he go and do this past portal cycle? Goes out and lands not one but two of the top quarterbacks in the portal in Dante Moore and Dylan Gabriel. Dylan Gabriel obviously going to be the guy for you this year in Eugene. But if I get a chance to hire somebody with less than 5 years of experience to start my football program, I'm going with Dan Lanning. He's only got 2 years, so he fits the qualifications. Dan Lanning is the first call I'm making. We'll say Dan Lanning says, hey, JD, I appreciate you, but guess what, man? I told many people this. The grass is very green in Eugene. Very green in Eugene. So I appreciate you, but I'm going to go ahead and stick out here. Say, okay, I understand that. So who's the next call we're making? Who's the next call you're making? For me, I'm giving a very, very quick call to Marcus Freeman out there in South Bend, Indiana. Marcus Freeman, only been a head coach for 2 years as well. He is 70% winning percentage so far at Notre Dame. And for him, I don't think he has, right now, consistently at Notre Dame at least, the most stacked deck of cards that he's playing with. Because you hear about Notre Dame and, yes, the academic standards. I think that's very difficult to recruit with, just to be real here. You have a smaller pool of individuals to pick from when you recruit. Also, the geography. Like, you're more often than not having to travel a good distance from your current state, if you're a talented high school football player, to get to South Bend. All right? It's not like it's just laid up there for you. It's not a quick drive. Again, probably hard to recruit with. And then on top of that, it gets cold in South Bend. It does. Like, I'm not telling you that's the end-all, be-all, but I'm telling you what, if you're on the fence and you're trying to sway a kid, telling them, hey, we got nice weather here at our school in South Bend, it gets a little bit snowy, I'm just telling you, I think that probably matters for some kids. So all that's to be said, the deck hasn't always been stacked in Marcus Freeman's favor, but guess what? He still wins. He still wins. On the recruiting trail, all the reasons I just mentioned as to why Notre Dame wouldn't recruit well, he's landed a top 10 class and a just outside the top 10 class his 2 years since he's been there. The thing I love about Marcus Freeman, too, he's going to swing big. He's going to challenge everything. We say it a lot on this show. That's not just something they put on a T-shirt to feel good about themselves and yell when they finish winter conditioning. Like, that's been real for him. And I understand that his first OC hire wasn't as smooth as maybe we would have liked it to be. Tell you what, he's gotten tremendous quarterbacks via the portal, and Sam Hartman and now Riley Leonard was a big get for them. You go out and bring back the arguably top OC available coming off of just last year, and Mike Denbrock from LSU, who led the most potent offense in college football. I think his best days, too, as a head coach are very much so still in front of him. This list is of guys with less than 5 years of experience for a reason. But Marcus Freeman, as he continues to tinker with his process and how he does things, he's going to keep crushing it. And I have zero doubts that in this expanded playoff, Notre Dame is going to be in good shape. Also, just so we're on record here, dude, one of the most likable people, college football head coach or not. Like, we had him on this show, I guess it was 2 to 3 months ago for a conversation. Just the most nice, genuine, likable human being. So can't imagine that hurts recruiting either. Marcus Freeman, I'm giving him a call to be one of our head coaches, or to be our head coach, not one of our head coaches. He is our head coach if we get him to say yes to our program. If those guys say no, I'm giving a call to Brent Venables. And Brent Venables at Oklahoma right now, 2 years of experience. He brings the juice. That's pretty obvious, especially if you've watched him from his Clemson days. You have a strength coach that is assigned throughout the course of the game to pull Brent Venables off of the numbers, because otherwise he'll go out there in the middle of the play and make a tackle. The thing that I love about him, if I bring him in as my head coach, has he won a national championship yet? Not as a head coach, but I tell you what, he's done as a coordinator. He knows what it looks like to win at a high level. He knows what the roster is supposed to look like. He knows what the culture is supposed to look like. I tell you what, that matters. Being able to have a pretty solid blueprint and be able to tinker with it for yourself, that matters. And I think that's going to ultimately lead for a lot of success for Brent Venables in the long run. In a short sample size at Oklahoma, went from 6 wins to 10 wins pretty quickly, has 2 top 10 classes so far at Oklahoma. He can and will recruit. When you watch Oklahoma play, too, and how they interact and talk about Brent Venables, guys play for him. Going back to culture, going back to buy-in. I don't think you can overstate the importance of that. So Brent Venables, I'm giving him a call, and we're going to make him our head coach if he says yes to us. Here's one that I think is maybe a little bit more off the radar, but I would be surprised if he's not a big-time college football head coach here in the next 5 or so years. He's already a head coach right now. He's got 2 years of experience. He's a quarterback whisperer. He is the head coach of the SMU Mustangs, and that's Rhett Lashley. Went from 7-6 his first year to 11-3 in AAC conference champs the next year. They're going to be in the ACC, so that probably helps things at SMU. It probably helps things when it comes to trying to keep Rhett Lashley as your head coach. 37 points a game and 38 points a game is what Rhett Lashley's offenses have averaged his first 2 years at SMU. As we move into the expanded college football playoff era, being able to speak quarterback fluently and get the quarterback position right is only going to become increasingly more important. Because as we move into this model, it's going to mirror, in my opinion, a lot more of what the NFL playoffs are. And I love the NFL. I love college football a whole heck of a lot more with every fiber of my being. But I love the NFL. And guys that win in the NFL, teams that win in the NFL, get the quarterback position really right. Brady, Mahomes, guys like that. And so Rhett Lashley, look at his track record. People throw a lot of shade at Tyler Van Dyke and what he didn't do at Miami. Tyler Van Dyke had a lot of success when Rhett Lashley was his OC. Rhett Lashley, to me, changed the entire way that people looked at TVD. Look at what he's done at SMU. Tanner Mordecai lit it up when he was there. Preston Stone lit it up last year for SMU. So at the end of the day here, I feel good about where my offense will sit, and I think that college football is starting to trend more and more towards a offense-driven, quarterback-centric formula when it comes to winning at a high level. Joey McGuire, head coach of Texas Tech, been head coach for 2 years. So we are way under the 5-year mark for a lot of these guys. So we're passing that test with flying colors. I don't think you can find anybody in the college football world, or just world period, that will say a bad word about Joey McGuire. Like, he is one of the most, in my opinion, like, genuine human beings you can find. He's a roster builder. He's an elite evaluator, and their personnel department is ahead of the curve. I'm telling you, I don't think that they are the last team to go to this model and how they evaluate and recruit talent. They have a personnel department, and we've said this on previous shows, that will evaluate the talent and then offer the kid, and then the coach will recruit that kid. So it's not a situation where, like, the linebacker coach sees a linebacker he likes, he recruits him, he offers him, and that model is fine. But to have an entire sector of your staff dedicated to specifically evaluating and determining who can play football for you, I think that's going to be ultimately the way that a lot of teams go here in the future. And it's allowed Texas Tech to be early on some guys and put together solid recruiting classes. Culture is creme de la creme over there. The buy-in is creme de la creme over there at Texas Tech. If you hire Joey McGuire, you're in great shape, and I think that the best is yet to come for them, too, at Texas Tech. Last one to get to here, and this is not a last, but this is not a, I guess the last call kind of situation, just a matter of preference. Mike Elko, to me, is like the pepperoni pizza of this list. Is it going to be like, are you winning national championships because you hired Mike Elko? Maybe, but I'll tell you what, the floor is a heck of a lot higher than a lot of other guys on this list. Like, you hire Mike Elko, you bring culture, you bring structure, you bring toughness. Currently, A&M has a top 10 class in 2025, so he's recruiting. 3-9 was what Duke was before he got there. Bada bing, bada boom, he shows up, they go 9-3. So I like the way that A&M is going to trend under Mike Elko. I think he's going to be phenomenal. And I have him on this list towards the back just because I want to see him do more with more. And you could say that about a lot of these guys that we have towards the end. But, again, I think it's really dealer's choice after you get out of that top two in my mind. So to recap it here, guys that I am calling to be my head coach, my program, with less than 5 years of experience. Dan Lanning gets the first call. Marcus Freeman, likable, genuine, great recruiter. He's going to do tremendous things in Notre Dame. Brent Venables, he knows what it looks like. He brings the juice, knows how to build a roster. Rhett Lashley is starting to turn more and more towards an offensive style of football here in college football. It's favoring the quarterback. Rhett Lashley speaks quarterback. Look at his resume. Joey McGuire, love the culture, love the personnel side of things. And then Mike Elko, such a high floor hire. I think he's going to do wonderful things at A&M. And to be clear, too, I think that they could win national championships with him. I do not think that is unreasonable to have that thought around Mike Elko. All right, so there's kind of been if you follow Hayes Fawcett on Twitter or you follow On3 or the On3 Recruits page on Twitter, then you've been keeping up with everything that's been going on in the recruiting world. USC has lost not one, but 2 5-star players from the defensive side of the football over the course of the last 24 to 48 hours. Justice Terry and Isaiah Gibson had both committed during like the month of March to USC and then just recently decommitted. Now it's worth noting, Justice Terry and Isaiah Gibson, both from the Southeast. So getting them to commit early on in the cycle, with still a long way to go to National Signing Day, if you were a USC fan, yeah, it made you a little bit uncomfortable, but I mean, you take a 5 stars commitment when they offer it to you. One, what's going on? We'll talk about that with Josh Newberg here in a second. But two, where do things sit if you're a USC fan? That's where I want to start. Because if you're a fan of USC, rather, either side of that, this hurts. Like, this sucks. And it should hurt. Let it hurt. But you also look at the rest of your calendar and you're like, all right, we got a long way to go now. Like, we can't just sit here and be disappointed about this. We got to kind of pick ourselves up here and make something shake. So what's next for USC? I think when you look at the future, you're like, yeah, this hurts, but it's not National Signing Day. Like, you still have 6 months until Penn has to meet paper for the early signing period. You have a quarterback, a 5-star quarterback, and Julian Lewis, who is still committed. Even with those decommitments, USC is still on the doorstep of a top 10 class. And the big thing here, too, for USC, for me, is you still have a whole freaking season to play. Like, I have to believe if USC was consistently a top 10 school when it came to the defensive side of the football, I bet some of these commitments would probably stick. We'll go show them. Go put proof of concept together in the Big Ten, a line of scrimmage league, that this is a new USC. This is a new USC defense under Danton Lynn and Eric Henderson. I think when it comes to, like, the immediate future, like, they have a big recruiting weekend this weekend. A chance to stabilize optics. A chance to get everybody sort of back on the same page. Hey, we're good. Hurts to lose recruits. We're good. But like Sylvester Stallone and Rocky, it ain't about hitting. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. I think that's about what he said, but the sentiment rings the same. They have a lot of big stages here for USC. They're going to go ahead and try and flip kids. In some respects, you kind of just charge into the game. Yeah, we lost a 5-star. Guess what? We're going to go out and recruit some more 5-stars. We're going to try and steal somebody else's 5-star. We're going to go out and recruit through the whistle and try and find a way to add more talent. I ain't hear no bell, is what you'd be saying if you're a USC fan. I did not hear a bell yet. We're going to keep on pushing. We're going to keep on moving forward. And I think it just puts a heavier emphasis on this season. In terms of stages, if you're USC, to make a statement in the future, that first game against LSU, SEC opponent, that'd be a nice one to show out for defensively. I know it's a lot of new pieces on that side of the football for LSU, but like, if you go out and shut down what was last year's top offense in the country, I think that would go a long way in making a statement. You got Michigan at Michigan. Go win that game. Michigan's the bully, defending national champions. Go win that game. Go play trench warfare in that game. You got Penn State in Los Angeles. You got Notre Dame in Los Angeles. A lot of big opportunities here for USC to make a statement to the 2025 class that this is a different defense. It's going a different direction. And I promise you, proof of concept would go a long way when it comes to recruiting the defensive side of the football. So that's my take on it. But we sat down with Josh Newberg, host of the Inside Scoop and national recruiting analyst for us here at On3, to chop it up, get his take on things, and also look to the future and where things stand with Julian Lewis on the heels of these decommitments. Check it out. Josh, obviously, Tough past couple of days for the old folks out there in Los Angeles. You lose not one but two five-star commits on the defensive side of the ball, Isaiah Gibson, Justice Terry. And I think the best place for us to start with this conversation is what the heck is going on in L.A. right now?
It's been a rough week. They kind of ripped the Band-Aid off because they lost them both within a 24-hour period.
Sure.
So there was it wasn't like one decommitted, you had a more in the loss, and then it was both of them within a 24-hour period. What the heck is going on in LA? Well, for one part, Julian Lewis is still committed.
Yes.
So that's a positive.
Huge.
Through all of this, Julian Lewis, the five-star quarterback from Carrollton, Georgia, is still committed. So what happened? Well, in my opinion, I think, USC had these guys out in March. Isaiah Gibson and Justice Terry, both from the state of Georgia, were both on campus in LA. In March, it was exciting. Coach Henney was there. Some of the former players were there. There was just an excitement in the air. They probably pressed for their commitments. The guys jumped on board. Yep. It's early, and then they go home. But they don't go home like down the street. They go home 3,000 miles away back to Georgia. Isaiah Gibson never ends up making it back to campus. Justice Terry had a visit scheduled for this weekend. He ends up flipping, and he's going to go to Alabama this weekend. So in hindsight, can you say that, hey, maybe the strategy for USC to take these guys so early didn't pay off? It backfired. Now they're, decommitted. USC's out of it. Maybe in hindsight you can say that, but also for the same reasons that I just said, why they maybe lost them. Well, that's a great reason to also take them. You had all this buzz going on campus. You have this new D-line coach. You have 2 5-stars at positions of major need for your program. How can you turn that down? If you have an opportunity to get them on your commit list, you're going to take it. But in the end, USC is just they're going to throw some haymakers. Yep. They're going to be in it for some of these 5-stars. They're going to land some, they're going to lose some. But in the end, they're going to win more of these recruiting battles than they're going to lose. But those losses are going to feel devastating in the moment, just as these have. But in the end, like I said, USC will finish out winning more recruiting battles than they will lose. They will have a great recruiting class. But in the meantime, it's a roller coaster ride.
Oh, there's absolutely a roller coaster ride. And I went over to WeAreSC, the USC on 3 site, checked out the board. Now, honestly, I just dropped a little note on there, and I was not sure how it would be received because, you're walking on a pretty, devastating situation if you're a USC fan. I just said, hey, what's morale like right now? I know this hurts. Long way till signing day. If you put some proof of concept together, you can probably still be in a great place, win pen meets paper for that 2025 class. And I think the overarching sentiment from that board here was, hey, this sucks. It's never great to lose 10 stars when it comes to 2 recruits. But at the same time, I think the USC fan base felt a little bit like, hey, this is great, but it does feel kind of weird because we got 2 big-time commits from guys that are in the state of Georgia. Like, I guess we're not going to ask questions, but it feels a little bit too good to be true. What you said, though, I think is exactly where USC fans probably are thinking right now. Okay, we still got Julian Lewis in the boat.
Right.
We still got him. So moving forward here, who's still on the board for USC, or what's the immediate course of action if you're the USC staff when it comes to regaining momentum and attacking that side of the football?
Well, the good news for USC fans is this weekend there will be another double-digit official visit weekend on campus at USC. So there will be an opportunity for them to turn this around. But they're in a great position for a lot of guys. Trey McNutt's one of them, who's another out-of-state 5-star. He's from the state of Ohio. But they, at this point, I think you got to start realizing that, hey, we can recruit nationally, but right now, while this program's still building, maybe it's smarter to recruit a little bit more locally, because USC, there's a couple teams out there that recruit with the best of them. And when I say the best of them, I'm talking Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, Ohio State, kind of that Texas in that knit group. Well, USC's also in that group. But the one difference about USC and Auburn, and they suffer some of these devastating losses as well and some big wins, but I think USC and Auburn they match those teams on the recruiting trail, but they don't necessarily match them with wins on the field yet. Once USC gets more wins consistently on the football field under Lincoln Riley, they won't be as subjected to these devastating losses.
100%.
It'll be a little bit more of a smooth ride instead of this roller coaster of emotions that you feel. I mean, you see it at Auburn too, and I think it's because of the same reason. If Auburn's swimming in the same pools as Ohio State, Georgia, Texas, Alabama, the only difference is wins on the field.
Yep. The growing pains are painful for a reason. It feels like maybe they're still kind of experiencing those. Julian Lewis, I think if you're a USC fan, is probably on your mind 24/7, but especially right now when you see some momentum going the opposite direction, kind of tide coming out. In your mind, how much does this impact where he stands with USC losing some talent in that class?
Well, he was the first commit in this class. They went several months, like 6-7 months, until they landed another one. That was on the weekend in March when Justice Terry and Isaiah Gibson committed. So at one point, he was the only 5-star on that commit list. Then there was 3 5-stars. Now there's still 1. He's still committed to USC after what's happened this week. He's going to be at Colorado this weekend. He was at Auburn the weekend before. I think those 3 teams, along with USC, are kind of the main contenders right now. He told me in Nashville when we sat down with him at the On3 Elite Series that he did intend to shut things down at some point before his senior season for a couple reasons. One, to eliminate distractions heading into his senior year, but also he understands that at some point you got to kind of shut it down, plant your flag, and say, this is where I'm going to be at. Let's build the best recruiting class I can around me. It's kind of hard to do when you're on visits, taking official visits to other programs. Even though he has maintained, he's maintained that he is rock solid to USC, that he's committed. He's never wavered from that. But it just sends a little bit different message when you're doing photo shoots at Auburn, and then you're going to be in Boulder. I'm sure that there's going to be a great social media presence off that. So at some point he's going to shut it down. I think that'll solidify if he ends up going to USC. That'll help USC kind of continue to build this program, but they'll be okay. The biggest thing they can do is just go get these wins on the football field this season, and that'll kind of smooth everything out on the recruiting trail.
It feels like to me, if you can restabilize optics, starting with this weekend, get a big commit or two, kind of re-solidify that class,
get momentum
bump up in the
back
rankings.
In the right way.
Exactly. You go win on the field, show that it's a different defense with Dan Lynn and Eric Henderson, and then you kind of close late. Maybe it's in-state. Maybe you're getting the spatula out and flipping a little bit. That, to me, feels like the recipe. Josh, if you are a USC fan, Lincoln Riley's highest-rated class he's had in L.A. has been number 9. If you're a Trojan fan, what is a ranking on signing day? You're sitting there and you're like, okay, I can live with this. Maybe we're not the top-ranked class in 2025, but I can stomach a X-ranked class. What does that mean?
I think I'd be excited about an 8 somewhere in the top 10.
Yeah.
Even if it's a lower top 10, 7, 8, I'd be really excited about that because also USC, they play the portal, so they don't exactly go overboard when it comes to taking high school athletes. So, they can maybe slow play the high school. So if you finish in the top 10, if you're USC, I think that's a step in the right direction, especially if Julian Lewis is on your commit list. Now, sans Julian Lewis on that commit list, I think it's going to be hard for them to get a top 10 class. But if you have Julian Lewis on that commit list and you finish top 8, I think that's a great finish for USC.
Vibes are back high. Vibes are back in the right spot.
Vibes are low right
10.
now.
Yeah.
Losing 2 5-stars in 24 hours. But this weekend, big official visits. We Are SC, they do a great job of covering everything from football to recruiting. Scott Schrader and the boys, they have a big weekend ahead of them.
It's a game of runs. It is a game of runs. Keep in touch with all of the runs over on the On3 Recruits channel. Josh is producing bangers multiple times a week on the Inside Scoop, so lock in there. Josh, appreciate you, man. We'll do this again soon, I'm sure.
Definitely.
Awesome. Subscribed over there. What are you doing? You're missing out on a whole sector of the college football world and the Inside Scoop as well. So, get locked in over there. Get locked in. The Inside Scoop. Wilt Fall Whip Around. 5-star flex with Phillip Dukes. Bangers on the rotation. So lock in over there. While we were on the Josh Newberg segment, I looked it up. And the quote from Sylvester Stallone in Rocky is, "It ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward." We love that, and we wish the best for USC as they are looking to keep moving forward and keep a good thing going out there in L.A. Vibes should stay high, as Josh Newberg mentioned here. Vibes should stay. It's okay for them to dip, but you got to restabilize and have kind of a what's next mentality. Easier said than done, but that's the path forward for USC. Hey, if you're dialed in right now, make sure you've liked the video. We just appreciate you doing so as we keep this rolling. We've mentioned a lot of different teams moving to new conferences. And so with that being said, what's it going to take in their new conference? Like, what's it going to take to be successful in the Big Ten or in the SEC or heck in the Big 12 even? We'll talk about that. Oklahoma, let's start in the SEC with them because I think they are the most fascinating team, arguably in all of America, definitely in the SEC. The over-under win total for OU is at 7.5. And at first, you're like, wait a second. We mix up some numbers here? Like, how is Oklahoma, how is that prestigious brand being billed at 7.5 wins? Well, they lost their whole offensive line, more or less. They lost their quarterback, and lost is a strong word. They decided to go a different direction with their quarterback in Jackson Arnold. Dylan Gabriel gone to Eugene. How do you be successful your first year in the SEC if you're OU? I've said this before. I love the defense. Like, I have no reservations about the defense. I think Brent Venables, with that being the side of the ball he specializes in, they're going to be okay on defense. The key to success for OU is being able to give Jackson Arnold a chance. Like, whatever you think about Jackson Arnold, there's probably mixed opinions based on the bowl game. There's, oh, well, he must not be that good because he threw this many interceptions and had trouble in the bowl game. It is what it is. But here's the reality. We don't even get to see who's right in that discussion. We don't even get to see him live up to that 5-star billing if you can't protect him, if you don't give him a chance. Now, giving him a chance could look a lot of different ways. The first way is the way you'd like it to happen probably is you just have the offensive line come together. Bill Bedenbaugh does what he does, gets in his bag, gets the O-line right, and bada bing, bada boom, you're off to the races. The other potential scenario here if you're Oklahoma is you just dial it up for him. All right, you dial it up for him. Seth Luttrell gets on the walkie-talkie, says, hey, listen, we're going this way pre-snap. Here's what you should be looking at. We help him out pre-snap. Or you just dial up some quick game, get the ball out of his hands quickly, and get it to playmakers in space. Because if they can get the ball out of his hands and get it to guys like Deion Burks, guys like Angelo Anthony, guys like Nick Anderson, they're going to have a chance. Jaleel Farouk, they're going to have a chance. And the run game is going to be pretty good as well. I think they're going to be able to keep defenses off balance with that. So give Jackson Arnold a chance is the key to having success your first year in the SEC. Let's stay in the SEC. For Texas, what's going to be key to success for them? I think the defensive line definitely has to measure up. There's no way around that. You lose two defensive tackles that were All-Americans for you last year. So you got to be able to be solid on the defensive side of the football, especially on the line of scrimmage. But for me, if I'm Texas, the key to success is keeping the main thing, keeping your strength offensively. Like, the faces might change, the plan of attack does not. Quinn Ewers, going into year 3, you got to maximize him. Steve Sarkisian, offense is what he does. Just because you lost J.T. Sanders, Xavier Worthy, and Adonai Mitchell does not mean you got to pivot your approach here. That's why you hit the portal and got Silas Bolden, who I think is a Swiss Army knife, going to be a stud in Austin. Isaiah Bond, I've already called my shot over 1,000 yards receiving for him. Amari Niblack's going to have big shoes to fill, but has to fill it nonetheless. If those guys can translate and acclimate and integrate into that offense effectively, they're going to be in good shape. Because as much as Texas needs to play good defensive football, the offense is still, in my opinion, what makes Texas so dangerous and what Steve Sarkisian majors in. Let's go to the Big Ten here. For Oregon, man, the key to winning the conference will be about the big boys. It will be. And the offensive side, yes, but I think the defensive side is maybe more interesting to look at. Derek Harmon is a big boy transfer from Michigan State. I think he's something like 6'5", 320-ish pounds. Like he is a large human being. Last year, Oregon allowed 3.5 yards a carry. That's really good. That is really, really good. That'll put you right in the top, probably 3-ish this upcoming season for the Big Ten if you're able to duplicate that. But if you want to win the conference, you got to do something you haven't done. I need 3 yards of carry allowed. I need it. Mateo Uiagalelei, Jordan Birch, I need us to just be a stone wall and be able to be that force up front that differentiates Oregon from the rest of the pack. Because the SEC is a line of scrimmage league without a doubt, but I think when you look at the Big Ten, like Michigan won that conference the last 3 years for a reason. Because they're big human beings were just superior to everyone else in that conference. And then they had the skill to capitalize. I think Oregon could have that same formula, but the defensive line is really where I'm looking most closely for the Ducks in 2024 as they move into the Big Ten. Now, USC is also joining the Big Ten. We've talked about them a fair amount already on this show. And the obvious thing to say here is the defense has to get better, right? I mean, you turn on any segment on YouTube around USC and around and around what has to happen in the defense, like that's going to be what everyone talks about because it's the most obvious eyesore, right? It's what jumps out at you. But I think for USC to have success year one in the Big Ten, it's reasonable to think that maybe a new defensive staff and a new scheme is going to take a second to maybe acclimate. I'm not telling you they're going to be as bad as they were last year, but it's reasonable to assume, hey, maybe it's going to take us a second to get our sea legs. So I think the real key ingredient here is Miller Moss has to come out Holiday Bowl style just swinging. Like just throwing shots, throwing missiles. Like that has to be, I believe, what stays consistent for USC from a formula standpoint, because last year you went 7-5 with the reigning Heisman Trophy winner back for you at quarterback in Caleb Williams. What if you didn't have Caleb Williams? Is USC making a bowl game? Probably not. So Miller Moss, I'm not saying you got to be Caleb Williams, but I am saying you got to hold up your end of the bargain while the cavalry is coming on defense and they're getting their side of the ball all figured out. So I'm not saying you got to score 50 a game, but like we need something there to hang our hat on if we're USC, especially early. Last team I want to talk about here is Utah. Utah is favored in Vegas right now to win the whole freaking conference in the Big 12. Their first year out there. How about that? There's an interesting narrative around the Big 12, and I think it's sort of started to deteriorate a little bit over the course of maybe the last year or so. But the narrative for the longest time was the Big 12 does not play defense. Because you think about Michael Crabtree, Graham Harrell, potentially a random college football player of the day in the future. You think about Lincoln Riley's offenses at Oklahoma, like Oklahoma State, and what they were previously with Brandon Weeden and Justin Blackman. Like you think of all these great offensive players, you think about all these great spread offenses, but in actuality, the Big 12 has shifted over the course of the last 3 years to a defensive conference. To win the Big 12, you have got to be in the top 2 within the conference, at least, in terms of points per game allowed. That's what the numbers say. And so for Utah, they bring back 70% production from last year's defense that allowed 20 points a game. So if Utah can duplicate that, I think they're going to find themselves in Jerry World. I really think the key is still on defense. Cam Rising, you hope he gets back all the way healthy, is a version of himself and what you've come to expect from him. The flow is tremendous. Brent Keithy is back. He's going to be a dog for you. Money Parks. Like, there's a lot of pieces on offense as well to get excited about. But I think the true key for Utah, if they want to accomplish what they've set out to accomplish, their first year in the Big 12 and win the whole thing, is to be elite once again on the defensive side of the football, because that is now what the Big 12 requires of you to win that league. So we'll see what happens, man. A lot of shifting pieces. A lot of shifting pieces. Talked about the tectonic plates in college football. I guess it was Tuesday, maybe? Yeah, Tuesday. So curious to hear y'all's thoughts in the chat here when it comes to who's going to win the Big 12, because that's one now that Utah's favored in. Legitimately, anybody can win that league. Anybody can win that league, if you ask me. So that'll be a lot of fun to talk about here throughout the course of the season. Quick sip of caffeine, then we're on to the next one. Like the video, please, and thank you. All right, we're juiced up. We're juiced up. We're ready to roll. You know who else is juiced up? The folks in Athens, Georgia are extremely juiced up. Preseason, Georgia is favored to win the whole darn thing. So we'll take a step back from that for a second and ask the question here. If you're a Georgia fan, what's a win total that you would be content with at the end of the season? Because Vegas has got you over under 10.5. I mentioned the odds for you to win the national championship. Like, Vegas is just essentially telling you, hey, our eyes work just fine. We know what we're getting into here. Georgia's really freaking good. And we're treating them accordingly with our preseason win total. As we sit here right now in June, I would 110% concur with Vegas. I think Georgia may be the best team in America. Like, you look up and down this roster, I don't see a lot of areas of concern. Your quarterback play, you probably have the best quarterback in college football in Carson Beck, for my money, going into year 2 in the same system. You have Maybe not the same caliber of weapons as a Brock Bowers from a season ago, but you still have, I think, a ton of quantity of weapons. I would say more quantity than last year. You got Colby Young from Miami. He is a 50-50 ball machine. Dominique Lovett put on a clinic in that spring game. Dylan Bell is Georgia's version, for my money, of Debo Samuel. Trevor Etienne in the backfield. They're in great shape offensively. Defensively, as long as Kirby Smart is the head coach, they're going to be great on defense. New pieces for sure. We'll see how that translates. But the line of scrimmage from Mykel Williams to the other side of the football on the offensive line, they're going to be just fine in the trenches, is Georgia. Everything it takes to win in college football, Georgia majors in. So there's that part of it. But then you look at, the rest of college football, and you're like, well, there's a lot of other good rosters too. Like, heck, Urban Meyer just told us yesterday, or I guess a couple of days ago, that he thinks Ohio State's got the best roster they've had in history. They can match up with Georgia. No doubt. I think a lot of folks will preseason probably predict Ohio State and Georgia in the national championship game. Will we predict that? We'll see. Texas, they're stacked. Michigan, who knows what they're going to be, but coming off a national championship, there's a lot of good rosters. So why is there confidence around Georgia right now? The big thing with me around Georgia, outside of the roster, which is massively impressive, when I talk about Georgia or when I predict Georgia in the future, I have a pretty high level of confidence that I know what they're going to be under the hood. Like, I know what the focus level is. I know what the competitive temperature is at. I know what the culture is at. And not to say that I have questions about other schools, but I think you have a supreme amount of confidence that with Kirby Smart's operation, it is not going to have any place for complacency. They are going to be as close to the same team every Saturday as humanly possible. Now, they might have a quarter here or there where they look un-Georgia-ish, but for the most part, Georgia is going to be Georgia. And that's why they've been a national champion 2 of the last 3 years. They're consistent, both at a talent level and, more importantly, at a culture level. So the schedule for Georgia, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's tough. It's very tough. You got Clemson to start the year in Atlanta. I think they'll boat race Clemson, so we're on the same page. But even with that being the case, they're the top 20 team. At Kentucky, at Bama, you play Auburn for homecoming, and I think Auburn's going to be sneaky this year. You're at Texas, you're at Ole Miss, and you got Tennessee. So for those of y'all keeping track at home, that is 5 top 20 teams preseason that Georgia has on the docket. And then you have 3 top 10 teams, give or take, all on the road. All right, that is anything but a cakewalk. Now, even with that being said, on paper, I would probably give Georgia the edge from a roster level in every single game. Texas probably a lot closer, but in every single game, I'll give Georgia the talent edge there. But I think last year you could probably also say the same thing about Georgia. Like Carson Beck, at times you were like, who is he going to be going into the season, and you weren't sure. By the end of the year, I think Carson Beck was one of the best quarterbacks in college football. So on paper, I think Georgia last year has a very strong case to be the best team in the country. But what happened? Football happened. Like, people just kind of throw the expression out there, hey, life happens. What are you going to do? Same thing with football. Football happens. You're not healthy. Teams have their day on that day. You don't get the calls. There's just this sport is unpredictable, and that's why we love it. But with all those variables baked into it, there is still the possibility that talent isn't the end-all, be-all on that day when you play Georgia. So the win total question here, which is what we're answering, is a little bit funny, just in the sense that, if Georgia were to go 12-0 and then lose in the SEC championship and then lose the first round of the college football playoff, nobody in that fan base is like, oh, good, we won 12 games. No. You're probably happy the over cashed, and you're probably paying for some Christmas presents a little bit early, but nobody is like, man, 12-0, good year, boys. No. So, I think a win total you're happy with, based on what it would mean, is probably 11-1. 12-0 is probably your expectation, but you can live with 11-1 because that probably means you're in the SEC title game, you're definitely in the college football playoff, you have a chance at a first-round bye. 10-2 Georgia, to me, is honestly a little bit scary, especially if that means Georgia somehow found themselves in that 5 spot. Now, 10-2 is maybe a little bit of a generous record for the 5 spot, but it is what it is. It's not about the win total for Georgia. I think 11-1 you're happy with, but it's not about the win total. Kirby Smart and this team and this fan base got one goal. and that is to go 1-0 on January 20th in Atlanta. That's it. It's national championship or bust. And that's not to say that if they lose the national championship, or if they don't win the national championship, rather, there's a better way to say it, that they are somehow not a great football team, or we were wrong about Georgia. But I think it does mean you missed your expectation from a fan base level and from an internal standard. That is the goal. That is the end-all be-all. They are results-oriented. They're fine with checking all the boxes on the way up there if they want to do that, but it is all about, for Georgia, like I just said, winning the national championship. So 11-1, we'll take it. Great, let's roll. 12-0, great, we'll take it. Let's roll. Georgia's season is December through January. That is the games that they care most about. And more power to them. They've developed and provided that standard from a fan base and from a team standpoint. They have earned the right to set those lofty goals and expectations. They've been to the mountaintop many times. The scary thing, too, for college football, I'll say it again, is the fact that Georgia did not win the national title this last year. They don't have to manufacture some sort of, thing to chase or doubt against them. I know what the numbers say in Vegas, but Kirby Smart is telling them, hey, y'all haven't done anything here. Y'all maybe were on this roster when we won the national championship, but a lot of y'all weren't starters. A lot of y'all weren't the key contributors. You got to go win your own national title. I have to imagine some version of that is being pitched within the locker room in Athens. So, win total you'd be happy with if you're Georgia, 1-0 on January 20th. I think that's pretty cut and dry. All right, about to get to the live chat here. So go ahead and get after it right now. We're about to get to your thoughts, feelings, concerns in just a matter of moments. We'll go rapid fire. Probably got time for 3 or so. One of the best things we do on this show, I'm just going to be honest, hearing from y'all is what makes this whole operation go. Before we get to that, though, we predicted the top-rated offensive players in college football 25, the video game, when it drops. Let's give some love to the defensive side of the football, man. Defense wins championships after all, right? Make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel, the On3 YouTube channel. This show, The Hard Count, live 3 times a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern. So if you're watching this as a one-off clip, we appreciate y'all being dialed in, but the live show, man, is where the magic happens. So come get after us, or come get after it there with us, and also listen to the podcast, full hour-long episodes for you. Type in The Hard Count with J.D. Piquel, and you'll be off to the races. So I want to go position by position here, just like we did with the offense, and tell you who I think the top-rated players are. And at the edge defender position, this was not a tough decision to make. It's James Pierce. It's James Pierce from Tennessee. For us here at On3, in real college football, he is the number 1 rated player going into 2024. I mean, he will be a top 15 pick in future NFL drafts whenever he ends up going, probably next year. The blend of size and speed is ridiculous. He might be, and this is a very, very big might, very big maybe, he could be a potential 99 overall kind of guy if you're asking me. That would not shock me in the slightest, but he, to me, is the best edge defender in the game. Now, the defensive line position, there's a couple of good options here. Michigan's got not one but 2 guys you could go with, Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant. I'm going with Deion Walker, defensive lineman from Kentucky. Y'all, he was top 10 last year in the SEC in sacks with 7.5. He is 6'6", 350 pounds, and he's agile. You know how scary that is? You know how terrifying that is if you're an offensive lineman or an opposing quarterback to have a human being of his size that can move and pass rush, not just be a run stopper? Deion Walker, I think, will be the highest rated defensive lineman in this game, big number 0. At linebacker, again, a lot of good options. Could go a lot of different ways with this. I'm going, though, with the LSU linebacker, Harold Perkins. And this is going to be tough, too, for the folks out there at LSU and the staff at LSU if they don't have a ton of success with him defensively. Because last year you heard a lot about Harold Perkins is playing in the middle, let that man rush the passer. Harold Perkins, I believe, is going to be freakishly rated on this game when it comes to speed, when it comes to pass rush moves. You're going to have people tweeting, hey, I just got 15 sacks in one game with Harold Perkins. Why? Because I moved him to the edge position. He got after the quarterback. I mean, I'm just going to say he's going to wreak havoc in this game. I think the takeover factor you saw from him his freshman season, most notably that Arkansas game, You're going to see it in this game, and he'll be a freak show. At safety, it's the Alabama transfer to Ohio State, Caleb Downs. You could go Malachi Starks here. I wouldn't hate that. I just think Caleb Downs might be the best defensive player in college football, period. He led Alabama last year in tackles. Instincts are off the charts. Might play some running back this year for Ohio State. We'll see. I know the folks in Columbus cringe a little bit when I say that, but I'm wishful thinking from a college football fan that we see one of the best players in the sport play both sides. Would love that for him and his Heisman hopes. Again, the instincts, the coverage ability, the tackle ability, he's just getting started. I think he'll be the best graded safety in this game. And then the last position for us to talk about here at corner, to me, it's not Travis Hunter. And to be honest, I don't know how you rate Travis Hunter in this game if you're going by position, because I think he'll be pretty highly rated on both defensive and offensive sides of the football. He'll play receiver. He'll play corner. To me, the best corner in the game is going to be Will Johnson. Rangy, lengthy, modern kind of cornerback in today's game. Great speed, 6'2", so he's able to kind of cover your big receivers as well. The number 8 player for us in real college football for us here at On 3. That's not number 8 defensive player. It's number 8 player, period, in the country this upcoming season. 7 interceptions over the last 2 years. Y'all, that's freakish. So Will Johnson, to me, is the best corner in college football. So to recap it here for you, edge, James Pierce. At defensive lineman, I'm going Deion Walker from Kentucky. Linebacker, it's Harold Perkins. He's going to give people fits now in this game. I'm just telling you. At safety, to me, it's Caleb Downs. And at corner, it's Will Johnson. So Travis Hunter, he might be 99 in the game, just to be real with you. Travis Hunter might be the highest rated overall player in the game. But to me, those are your top defensive players. Let me know in the comment section where you disagree, where you agree, and who your top defensive players are going to be. That's a fun one, too, on Road to Glory, man. That's a fun one to play. Be an edge defender and just absolutely maul the quarterback. I'm just saying. There are worse ways to live in Road to Glory mode. All right, let's hear from y'all now in the live chat. Bringing on that man. Kickball season is off and running. It's Nick Brake. Nick, what's up, baby?
What's up, man? I got some questions.
I love it. What's going on?
First question. Sorry for the really loud Goat Dog, really quick. What's the perfect side to have with a steak? That's been the big thing today.
What's yours, Nick? You have one?
A twice baked potato, not a baked potato, but a twice baked potato. Very fattening.
Oh,
that's good
though. That's so good, man. I might be with you on the potato. I might go like the small fingerling potatoes. I could be convinced of some fries, honestly. Does that make me uncultured? Possibly, but I would say that probably pairs just fine. I'll go potato with you, though. I think like those little like circle potatoes that are kind of crispy. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm talking about?
I know what you mean.
I think those are probably the way that I would lean, but we're in the same boat there.
Okay, yeah, sounds good. Ferris Khan, ask JD, Michigan versus Oregon or MSU or USC. All have similar get in the door price. Which trip do you make to the big house or out of those games if you had to choose one?
Gosh, that's so tough. So I think Michigan-Oregon will be the better game. I think Michigan State-Michigan could be a good game in the future with Jonathan Smith. I'm going to go Michigan-Oregon, though, because of just how, again, the entertainment factor. But, man, Michigan-Michigan State, that rivalry, golly, I want to go to that one at some point. That's definitely on the bucket list. But for this year, we'll go Michigan-Oregon and feel pretty good about going with that.
Really quick, Goat Dog, scalloped potatoes and shrimp. Jared Stidham,
potatoes and shrimp.
The Truth, fries, salty fries.
I like
it. And then
it.
OG Gary said seasoned broccoli.
Ooh.
If you roast it, I'm in. But
look
at
OG Gary being
that's
healthy.
Disgusting. Yes. And then Ferris says roasted potatoes. Now, what is that? Is that roasted with a typo or is that a thing? Get back.
Could you broil and
in the
roast?
Chat. Yeah,
maybe?
If that's what that is, Ferris, let me know. Next question. Okay, we got a good one here. No, I lost it. JD, I don't know what I'm doing.
You're good, man. You're wheeling and dealing, brother. You're wheeling and dealing. I saw somebody in the live chat say, divide the chat. Who won, Kendrick or Drake?
Yeah.
I'll tell you this. I am a Drake stan. I am. Like,
it's awful.
Across the board, I've been a Drake fan. From from the So Far Gone to Comeback Season to, I mean, like, I'm talking about the old stuff. Room for Improvement, his very first mixtape. Like, we have been on the Drake bandwagon. With that being said, Kendrick won, and I don't know how close it was, unfortunately. So that hurts my heart, but that's just the way that we feel about it.
Okay. Chicken, 15-15. Soccer's not a sport.
Okay.
Okay.
There it is. Catching, just boom, quick stray.
Yeah. So the question was from Andrew. Retracted the chat because there was a typo, but I do like what he says. Says JD. I'm trying to remember, paraphrase here, but he was saying if Ohio State was to lose against Michigan and win the Big Ten, what does that mean for Ryan Day?
Ooh, I like this one. Here's a question that I will give to that question. If Ohio State loses to Michigan, part of me thinks that Michigan's in the Big Ten championship game. The other part of me wonders, okay, well, is Ohio State undefeated in that game? Do we just see a rematch like the next weekend between Ohio State, Michigan, and Indy? And does Ohio State beat Michigan in the game that ultimately will decide college football playoff seeding? I do think that if they win the Big Ten and if they go on a run in the college football playoff, that's going to, I think, sort of cool the room out a little bit, because it's going to be a little bit loud out there in Columbus if they lose to Michigan in Columbus for the fourth year in a row. Like, that's going to make some people very, very unhappy. I do think, though, that if you can win the Big Ten, I think Ryan Day stays at Ohio State. And I've said this a couple times, too. Like, if we get to the worst-case scenario where they lose to Michigan, they don't win the Big Ten, college football playoff happens, they don't win the national championship, I wonder at what point you're just like, this is toxic for both sides. Like, maybe we just need a mutual breakup a little bit. Ryan Day goes and just takes a job where he can go 11-1 and not have the entire city going after him. And maybe Ohio State goes out and hires somebody else. Again, I don't know who's better than Ryan Day for you if you're Ohio State. I've said this many times. I think Ryan Day is the guy out there in Columbus until he gives you a reason outside of the Michigan game to not be the guy. But that's how we feel about that. But a good question nonetheless. If they can win the Big Ten, that would be very big for his approval rating.
Okay, there's a lot of great questions, but I'll ask this one to end it. Even though Chicken randomly just took a shot at soccer, says, who is the best special teams in college football?
Ooh, this one is close to home. This one is close to home because I was a big special teams guy back in college. Iowa, it's hard to go against Iowa right now, Nick, to be honest. Like, Iowa, with what they did a season ago with dropping the net and being one of the best punt teams in America, and Taylor just absolutely slicing and dicing back there. I'll go Iowa, but I'm excited to see what happens here in the future. And I hope they keep the same special teams as they are right now. Like, I hope they don't adopt the whole NFL kickoff rule thing. I just think that's a little bit lame. I get it. Probably a good thing, overall when talking about the noggin, but I think kickoffs are great. So anyways, that's my 2 cents there. We'll go Iowa. Any break take, Knicks, to send us out into the weekend?
Not today, man. Not today.
None yesterday, none today? Nothing for us?
No.
What are you excited for this weekend? Give us that. How about that? That's a break take.
My buddies are coming in town.
Oh, okay. Heck yeah. What are we doing?
Jamar and Caden. Well, it's a bachelor party for one of my friends, Ian. He's getting married. So we're going to go go-karting and go watch a soccer game. Sorry if that scares anybody.
There it is.
But it'll be 98 degrees on Saturday here in Nashville, so
beautiful.
It's not going to be easy to go to.
Beautiful. Well, brother, you have fun with that. You have a tremendous weekend, and we'll run it back next week.
Likewise, yeah. Have a good one.
There it is. The man, Nick Brake. Weekend plans on the dock. I see Jared said I'm asking how kickball went. We're building. We're building for next year. We're building for the rest of the season. We're getting our legs underneath us.
3-2 loss.
3-2. Okay, that's not bad. 3-2 is not bad at all.
We were here. I'll pull myself back up here. We were down 3-0 in the first inning. It was a completely new team. Didn't concede the rest of the game. Scored the 2 runs at the end. But yeah, it's a process.
It's a process. You got to trust it. You're trusting it. The boys are getting some chemistry. New team. Mm-hmm. We're gonna be okay.
Yeah,
we're gonna be okay. Keep fighting. Keep fighting.
I'll fight. I slid into home last night.
You're a sicko. You know that?
Why not?
You're a sicko sliding into home.
Yeah.
You're a wild man.
Yeah, it was not a good plan, but it worked.
There we go. Appreciate you, Nick. That's that man. Nick Brake, sliding into home. Reckless abandon. No regard for human life.
Swervo season. Nick's so boring.
There you go.
Okay.
Hey, they need some break takes.
That's why I don't
Need some
give
break
my break
takes.
takes, because I'm boring apparently.
No, you're not boring. You're not boring. Don't let them chirp you in there. All right, I guess this is for real now though. It's like the fake endings. It's like when you go to a concert and they do the encore, and then it's like one more time. But for y'all, appreciate y'all being dialed in. Appreciate y'all making this show what it is. Subscribe on your way out. Hey, we're that much closer now. That much closer. Week 0 is right around the corner. Get your friends subscribed. Get your family subscribed. Get the people maybe you don't even like that much subscribed. We appreciate y'all making this show go. And we love y'all. We're going to keep this party rolling. We will see y'all next time.